by the president himself. You almost want to laugh, Joe. You almost want to laugh.
I couldn't stop from laughing. What an overstatement, especially considering the source. Let's bring it right now. NBC News and MSNBC law analyst and editor-in-chief of Lawfare, Ben Wittes. He's out with a new piece diving into what the DOJ watchdog report really says. So, Benjamin, this is what a fascinating report. About 90% of it is Jack Webb, just the facts, ma'am. And then the last 10% of the report reads like a talk radio script. The two don't go together. I guess, though, a lot of people who supported Hillary Clinton might be chuckling this morning at the karma of it all. It sort of reminds you of when Comey himself said that Hillary was not going to be indicted and then went on his own talk radio rant for 10 minutes and indicted her politically. But this report, I mean, coming from an inspector general, I was fairly shocked at how undisciplined he was with what our law professors would call dicta.
Yeah, it's a deficient piece of work product in the last 10 pages. The first 52 pages of it are actually quite informative and a pretty dry recitation of a whole lot of details about facts that we already knew. And the reason we knew them was, of course, that Jim Comey has been kind of nothing but upfront about what he did. He wrote 7 memos detailing his interactions with President Trump. 2 of those memos he considered classified and left only in the FBI, but several of them he regarded as unclassified and had copies at his house and sort of thought of as his own personal property, and didn't return when he left or was removed from the FBI. One of those he turned around and asked a friend, not me, by the way, a friend named Dan Richman, to give to the substance of to the New York Times, and some others he gave to his lawyers. Those were the facts. Those were always the facts. And the first 50-some-odd pages of this report simply lays it out in great detail, in much greater detail than most people will want to read. And then the last 10 pages are a kind of howl of rage and anger by the Inspector General that is really takes a remarkable position, in my opinion anyway, that it is inappropriate for the former director of the FBI to blow the whistle on the president's efforts to shut down the Michael Flynn investigation. And to me, the remarkable thing about this report is that the Inspector General of the Justice Department has effectively taken the position that if you're a law enforcement officer and the president tries to shut down a valid investigation, your obligation is to shut up.
Yeah, that's actually what I was just going to ask you, if I was misreading the conclusion of this in an inaccurate way, because that's exactly what he says. It's a reckless conclusion and suggests that law enforcement officers, if they believe the President of the United States has committed a crime, then they should shut up and they should cover up. And it's just a reminder, Benjamin, there never really was a determination on whether this was a crime or not. In fact, the Mueller report suggests that they could draw no conclusion on whether the president obstructed justice or not, simply because he was president of the United States. So the question is, why would the IG come to this conclusion, first of all? And secondly, if this was such a violation of the public trust, why didn't the Attorney General do what he knows would gain the president's favor more than even writing him a $30,000 check this Christmas, and not bring charges against James Comey?
Yeah, so I think the conclusion on the point that you just mentioned is genuinely bewildering. The IG sort of chides Comey for kind of not going through channels in raising the concerns about, you know, an Oval Office meeting in which the president asked him to shut down the Michael Flynn investigation. And you know, I sort of scratch my head and say, exactly what channel is he supposed to have gone through? Is he supposed to have complained to the Attorney General? Well, the Attorney General was recused. Is he supposed to complain to the Deputy Attorney General? The Deputy Attorney General had just arranged with the president to help fire him. Is he supposed to complain to the president? The president is the subject of the concern. So what exactly are you supposed to do if you're the former FBI director who has this explosive information that is, by the way, not classified, and you have all the channels have failed? And that strikes me as the sort of quintessential example of a situation in which talking to the press, or in this case, having a friend convey some information to a responsible reporter, is a perfectly reasonable thing to do. And the IG's position is, you know, to sort of wag his finger and say, this violates your employment agreement and it violates FBI policy. And I guess to that I say, like, you know, you know, in such a situations, a foolish consistency with policy really would be the hobgoblin of small minds. And I'm actually a little bit surprised that that's the position the IG takes.
Ben, Susan Del Percio here. We talk about the IG report and how it affects Comey on a big scale. But it also is setting precedent for DOJ and FBI policies. I mean, this is something where what happens when the next rank and file member has an issue, whether it's with their direct superior or one up, and we see the politicization that we just did from this IG report, where do they go? I mean, how does this affect DOJ and FBI for the rank and file people?
Right. So, you know, I don't fault the IG for noting technical violations of policy and the employment agreement here. I think, you know, in the dispute between the IG and Comey about who owns these memos, I think the IG probably has the better of the argument. And, you know, it's perfectly reasonable, in my opinion, for the IG to say, no, actually, these were documents you created in your capacity as FBI director. And to remind rank and file people that, in fact, when you're working for the government and you create even unclassified work product, that really does belong to the government, not to you to do what you want with. What's extraordinary about the IG report is the volume that he turns up the criticism to without any regard to the extraordinary circumstances. And he basically, it reads like he wanted to find that Comey had leaked classified information in a dangerous fashion. He couldn't find that because, you know, he didn't. But he gets angry that way anyway, as though it had happened. And so I think the message to current workforce members is, you know, be a stickler for the details of compliance with technical rules, even if the house is burning down, even if you're serving some awful larger objective in doing so, and ignore things like conscience.
Hey, Benjamin, it's Jonathan Lemire. James Comey has been a central figure in the drama of the Trump era now, dating back to that news conference he held with Hillary Clinton, for which he was also received a rebuke from a watchdog, to everything from the campaign and the release of the letter, reopening the investigation, and, of course, everything with the Mueller probe and his interactions with the president. Are there more threads, though, to be followed here? Are there more investigative matters that are going to be pursued? Or does this sort of, in some ways, close the book on the James Comey era as part of what we've seen the last couple of years in the context of Donald Trump's campaign and now presidency?
You know, I think this is probably the last major piece of investigative work product about Comey, but it isn't the last major piece of work product about the FBI.